I often just keep him sort of at arm's length just for like a power play, to try and keep a
Yeah,
bit of control over
you
the
got it.
situation. Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
He needs to know his place.
And he often doesn't know his place. So it's, it's good that you reaffirm that for him every week. He's like a dog. He needs to know the master, and he needs to know who the director is.
Okay. As long as there was a moment there where I was worried that there was going to lean into like a sexual thing, but I think we've steered away from it now, and it's more like an animal or like an orderly kind of thing than any sort of
Right.
relationship dynamic. So
All
thank you
right.
for steering away from that.
Well, look, I'm going to be really honest. I wasn't going there.
Okay,
So now you look like
an idiot.
the depraved one.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to mix
Um,
that up a little bit because so often I'm the smartest one in the room, and I really feel like this dynamic now, I'm sort of the underdog here, and you're coming in with your legal education, your female perspective, and really putting us in our place. So this is good. This is overdue.
well, look, I am confused why I'm on here, but excited. I don't know. I mean, anything could truly happen. So we'll see where this takes us.
Have you had a good day so far?
I've had to work today because I have
On
a
the
trial.
weekend.
Yeah, I often do. And as I tell Michael, so I've, I don't know if this will come up today, but I have, I'm doing a lot of sex cases at the moment. So a lot of
Oh,
rape trials at the moment.
oh gosh.
Yeah.
Is that just
Mm.
in the air at the moment? Why is it so many?
Just because of COVID, and things are kind of starting to return back to normal now. So
Oh,
trials are only now recommencing.
gosh. So has that been
Yeah.
a significant impact? Is it because of like court attendance, like actually getting into places in person's been so limited?
Yeah. And they're reluctant to have those go ahead virtually.
Right.
Um,
Any sort of
yeah.
trial or specifically sex related cases.
Well, any sort of trial, but specifically sex related cases.
Why is that? Is that because there's a little bit more, uh, I guess, visibility in a testimony if it's in person? Is that what's the thinking behind that in that area?
I suppose so, but I think it's just the judge wanting to get a sense of whoever's speaking to them,
Right.
rather than, I don't know, they do comment that they can't get um, a real accurate reading of what somebody is saying to them over a link as opposed to in person. And I
Yeah.
suppose that's through the body language and all that.
And I suppose you don't know whether they're also like reading something or there's someone off screen or you don't know what other kind of circumstances might be around someone when you're just looking through a webcam.
Mm. And I suppose just the gravity of the crime as well,
Mm.
um, wanting them to take it. I don't know, it just doesn't feel as serious when it's
Yeah.
on a video link.
Yeah, that's fair. Interesting.
What about you?
I've been
Mm.
well, thank you. I had a slightly less serious day, I suppose. I went for a run, and then went
Great.
and caught up with some friends for coffee, and
Hmm.
that was kind of my day. So it hasn't been to the same level, I'd say, of social importance
Mm.
or perhaps even effort required from me, but we're making up for it
Well,
now.
I think, it is important to get coffee, Nick.
Oh, thank you.
It is important to go for a run.
Oh, thank you.
Don't discount that about
It's a bit of
yourself.
self care. Because I
Exactly.
write myself off so
Exactly.
much. I find that I don't value my own time as much as I should. Maybe this is a
That's so
big turning
true.
point for me. It's
Yeah.
so nice to have, I guess, just like a warm and supportive voice on the other end of this call because
Yeah.
I don't really get that a lot of the time. So
I see that. I see that.
this is good for me.
And I can see this dynamic emerging now where we gang up on Michael, and I really like it.
Okay.
Um, and it's similar to the one that we had when we were all in person as well. So
Okay. Well,
some things
I
never
feel like part of
change.
the family, so that's really sweet of you.
And I
Uh,
wish you were part of the family, um,
and I don't
maybe even in place of other family
I don't want
members.
to ask you, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but if there was one sibling that you had to get rid of
Ben,
and replace with me, would any names come to mind?
I think I answered a bit too quickly, but it would still be Ben. I just think that you and You knew I was going to say that. You and Michael just have such a delightful dynamic.
Okay,
I just think it would
interesting.
be really
That went a different way
funny.
to where I thought, but I'm very grateful for it. Um,
Well, if I can say this, if you ask me that again in front of Michael, I'll say him.
okay, great.
But you know my true
speaking
answer.
of, I can see that there's someone knocking on the door, so I think we might need to introduce another member to this call. Unfortunately,
Mm.
What the hell is this?
Oh.
What the hell is this?
Sorry, that's a little bit.
Oh, Michael.
That's a bit awkward. Yeah, we were just in the middle of a podcast. Hey, buddy, what's up? Did you
What
were you
on here?
What were you? Are we scheduled to catch up or what's?
Is this a bit?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Laura and I were just doing a deep thought, and
I don't appreciate this. Not a little bit.
I didn't mean to. This is a little bit awkward.
It's a bit. Yeah, it is.
Have you started the podcast?
Yes,
without
we have.
Is that what
We
you're
have
saying?
started. We have started the podcast.
As we do most weeks.
I haven't done the
at this
intro.
time.
Maybe we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll bring in
tell,
Michael.
Tell me this.
Welcome to Deep Forward, everybody. Thank you all for being here. This is a podcast. We just sort of examine the big issues in the world and
Unbelievable.
just see them through just like a half female, half male perspective. Sitting through the internet with me this week, my good friend Laura. Hey, Laura, how you doing?
I'm really good, Nick. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. And I'm Nick.
No.
Oh, that's nice.
And special guest this week, Michael. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
This is not funny.
What's
This is not funny to me one
It's
bit.
not funny, no.
You've usurped me with my own flesh and blood.
I don't
It
think.
didn't even take that long either.
I don't think that
Wait.
it's a usurpation.
It's quite a natural
Usurpation.
transition, I think.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Have you done any segments yet?
Well, we've had a catch up. You sort of talked about the world. What I've done today. Yeah, so
No
I think
myths?
we've sort of been, quite happily going along now.
This is very fucked up.
What did
Anyway,
you?
Laura, nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining the show, Michael. I'm
What the fuck is this? Ugh.
Michael, tell us a bit
All
about
right.
yourself. How have you been? What's been up today?
What's it been up today? I'm
Michael, don't be rude. Come on.
sorry. I'm a guest after all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just 11 days sober, so I'm on the tees.
Oh,
So that's been going well. Been sleeping really well. Going rock climbing tomorrow.
oh.
Yeah. Sorry, what is this podcast about?
Oh, it's just a regular sort of topical chat about things happening in the world, political issues, cultural issues, and I find it always really helpful to hear Laura's opinion on things, particularly when we're dealing in areas in the legal realm or dealing with women's issues. I'd hate for this podcast to sort of be a bit of a boys' club where we just talk about things we're not really able to talk about or should be talking about without a valid perspective. So it's nice to
Sounds
have
like
you
you
on
need a
board.
straight white male perspective. To
Exactly.
Be honest.
I'm glad that you've brought that, and thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know. I feel like we should just get this thing rolling. Laura, you've been saying for a while that you sort of had some opinions, I suppose, about the sexual.
Wait, hold on. The bit's done. Okay, maybe we should properly introduce Laura.
I feel like we covered that at the top.
You've already done that. Are you serious?
By implication.
Michael, why don't you introduce me?
Okay. Oh, that might be a good idea. She's genuinely a better co-host than I am. So this is my favorite sister, Laura. She's 20-somethings. She's in her late 20s. She's the apple of my eye. She's by a long shot the favorite child, and rightly so, quite frankly.
Yeah,
she's
that's true.
more accomplished. She's got her head on her shoulders. She's just a better person all round. So naturally, she is my parents' favorite, and I don't blame them. But yeah,
A lot of compliments there. Laura, I've sort of...
It's a mixed bag.
I feel sort of like part of this family now. And I guess I'm wondering that if maybe there was a space up, or if you could make a space in your sibling dynamic, whether there's anyone maybe whose place I could take.
Yeah, well, there are two options here, aren't there? And Nick, Michael, you weren't here for this because you're a bit late to this podcast.
No, I wasn't.
Nick did ask me this before you got on the link, and I just wanted to hear what you thought I would say to this, Michael.
Yeah.
Before I give my answer.
And what is there a question coming?
Yeah. What do you think my answer to this would be?
Which sibling would Laura have kicked out to replace with me?
Even now, even asking him this question, he's confused. I mean,
I'm being straight up bullied here. This is my fucking show.
yeah, it's my show now.
No, I know who you'd pick. You'd pick me, because no offense to Ben, but that would not be a sustainable option to keep Ben around. If we're replacing someone with Nick, you'd want me and Nick rather than Nick and Ben, because that's not going to be a great dynamic, is it?
Interesting. Laura, how did you answer this question earlier?
Pretty similar to that, I would say.
Did you get that on tape?
I believe that very quickly she threw Ben out. And so it would have actually been the three of us, Michael. But I'm glad to see that your cynicism and self-hatred has really led to you throwing yourself out.
No, hold on. I threw Ben out. What do you...
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now look who's confused.
Sorry, there's
Welcome
so many
to the show,
Zabecki
Nick.
siblings.
Thanks for joining us.
No,
have
the
a
power
guest.
dynamics changed.
You got to think of the whole group. You can't just think of, the individual.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And we haven't consulted Dad about this, but, that'll be another interesting dynamic for us to tackle when that time comes.
Yes.
So this is the first time we've had a guest in... When was the last guest we had, Nick?
I think it would have been
It's
in
been so
person.
long.
It would have been in person
Yeah.
in Adelaide. So a long time ago.
I think it was maybe Britt. Do you remember my old
That's
housemate
true.
Britt
Actually,
in
that's
like
very true.
2016?
Yeah, that's very true.
So 6 years since we've had a guest.
Yeah.
Why has it been so long?
Just
We
because
didn't
our rapport is just so strong.
We didn't like the dynamic of having a smarter woman in the room, and we tried to really recover our egos over the course of a few years. But I feel like we're in a place now where
Getting
ready
there.
to be knocked down again.
Comes with age.
Right. So will it be another 6 years before?
It will be 6 years, yeah.
100%. If not more.
No. Michael, you have alluded to it earlier. Would you like to introduce... Well, I suppose I can pick back up where I was introducing, which was that the topic that has prompted this, I think, a little bit is the fact that we have been talking about Louis in previous episodes, and your continued enjoyment of his work, Michael, and ability to separate the art from the artist, and also wanting to clarify or minimize, seems like I'm over exaggerating, but put into perspective his potential crimes versus, actual rapes and that sort of thing. And we have had feedback off the pod about whether or not some of the things that he has admitted to doing were sexual assault and that sort of thing. And so I thought it would be interesting and relevant to have Laura pop on and sort of give her legal explanation, but also female perspective of the state of that culture and the Me Too of it. So, good luck. But Laura, did you have some opinions or something on Louis to get us started?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I did want to know though, were those people that were commenting, was that me or was that somebody else?
There was you. I think we've had, maybe not in the most recent mention of Louis, but I do think in prior discussions of it, we also had feedback then that was, I think, split down the middle, with a few people agreeing with Michael and a few people finding it less easy to stomach his behavior.
Mm. Well, maybe we could start with some of the comments made on your podcast in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nick, I can't really recall you saying anything too controversial about Louis C.K. on the podcast before, but
Here we
Michael, well, what you said, Michael, I think from my memory is that what he did wasn't illegal.
Yes. Correct.
Can you just kind of refresh everyone's memory?
Well, what he did was ask women, I believe it was just comedians, if he could jerk off in front of them. And some of them said yes, but I think the point of difference between me and Nick was that it was implicitly, whether or not they gave him permission, it was implicitly a mismatched power dynamic due to his fame, wealth, and power, that led some women potentially to, well, they did because they went to the New York Times with it, to feel like he had exploited that power. Now, that in itself is not a crime. It is it's a, what am I going to say here? It's a bad thing to do. I think that's the legal term.
Just to clarify, you're saying that him requesting permission and then doing the act.
Yes.
Is not
No,
a
so
crime.
he hasn't broken the law, but he's it's a kind of a fucked up thing to do. It's a gross thing to do, and it's creepy.
Yeah, I think we had also talked about in a conversation previously, I had described that as sexual assault. And you had, I think, pushed back on that and not agreed that it was sexual assault.
Right. Yes. I think if there's a request for permission made, then it seems like it can't be sexual assault. I understand that the power dynamic is skewed there, and it is still fucked up thing to do, but I wouldn't regard that as sexual assault.
And why is that?
Because he's asked permission. Mm-hmm. To get his cock out.
It's interesting to me because you've just mentioned about the power dynamic, but then it doesn't seem like your conclusion is factoring that in at all. Because I think that if you did,
we're talking about whether or not he broke the law here.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
So he hasn't broken the law because he hasn't been charged with anything, because he couldn't be charged, right? Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
So I don't know what the law in New York is, but that's certainly a crime here.
Okay.
And there are a couple of elements to that. So I don't know how funny this is supposed to be, but it's probably not going to be.
Doesn't have to be funny at all.
I'm laughing already.
So it's a charge called sexual activity directed at another person. They have to do the thing. They have to think that the other person will see them doing that, and whatever they're doing has to cause that other person to be either distressed or have fear.
Sure.
Now, I think that third part is the one that you might have the biggest issue with.
I don't have an issue with that at all. I'm just wondering how, from a legal perspective, if you're asking someone to do it and not just doing it, unprompted. That's a bad word to use, but if you've asked permission for it to happen, does that factor in legally at all?
Yeah, it does, and it makes things a little. Look, I'll say this: it does make things a little less black and white, but it does kind of raise an interesting question about how we interpret these kinds of agreements and what what everyone's understanding of consent actually is, isn't it?
Yes.
Um,
Agreed.
so, like, if we just strip back consent, it's, you know, two people entering into an agreement. And I'd probably say that it has, you know, a couple of hurdles that you need to get over before you can say that consent has been achieved. So the first is that, you know, the two parties are entering into the agreement on a balanced footing.
Yeah.
And then the second hurdle is that agreement is a mutual one, that everyone's got the same understanding, that it's made voluntarily, whatever it is. Now, I think the issue with Louis C.K., at least in my mind, is that he fails at the first step.
Which is what?
Which is that this agreement that he is supposedly entering into with these women is not made on a balanced footing.
Right. Okay, I understand that.
And then I think he fails at the second step as well, which is that, you know, when we think of whether or not two people have the ability to enter into an agreement on a balanced footing, that, you know, that they are entering into that agreement in a true way. So you're looking at it from a very black and white perspective. We've got a question asked, are you okay with me doing this? And then we've got a simple answer, well, I don't know what the answer was, but it sounds like it was something like, oh, fine, or something like that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's enough for you for the purposes of this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I understand what you're saying about the first step being it's the proposition is not being made on a balanced footing. I understand that. It is tricky though then for Louis C.K. or any famous person or any person with power, whenever they are going to ask that of someone, even if he was in in a kind of a sexual situation with someone who ended up being willing in that scenario, if he's asking, is it okay if I have sex with you? Even that is unbalanced then. Do you know what I mean? So because of his power, because of how high up he is, there is no way for him to ask a question that is on a balanced footing.
That's a really good point. But my response to that would be that's just one of the factors that we take into account when considering if it's a balanced footing. Sure. Here, there are other factors to consider as well, which is not only that he is exponentially more rich and powerful and well-known than the people that he's speaking to, but also the physical surroundings of where this is supposed to be happening as well. Imagine, and look, I think we've had this discussion in the past. I don't know if this is something you factor into when you talk about these kinds of issues, Michael, but imagine being someone who is physically smaller than somebody else in a hotel room where, you know, they might be blocking your only exit from the room, where you don't have the opportunity to call out for help. You have no other kind of physical way of getting out of that room. There's no one else in that room to help you if you need it. And then there's the added layer of, well, what are the consequences for me if I say no to this?
Sure.
Not just physically or safety wise, but also what's going to happen to my career.
Sure.
So these are a number of factors, and I think are factors that he failed to take into account when he did this, or just didn't want to.
And just to clarify that's coming in to the consideration of the balance question, still at the top. It's the power dynamic, but it's also an unbalanced question when you're talking about physical surroundings, physical differences in terms of the comparative heights or strengths, access to help, access to exit, that kind of thing. That's all still coming under this overhead of the imbalance of that request, the consent request. Cool. Thank you.
So I think he can look at it and say, well, I fulfilled my responsibility. I asked them a simple question. But in reality, and if we think back to most of our own sexual encounters, we should know better that that is not the only thing that we should be taking into account. And I would also say that what Louis C.K. failed to do is to take what should have been most of the responsibility for making sure that that balance was achieved, rather than what he did, which was put most of that onus onto the other person.
Sure.
So can you give an example of how that might have been achieved? What could he have done?
Oh, well, for example, perhaps having a conversation with them prior to entering the hotel room, establishing a set of agreed terms or whatever it is, in a situation where there might have been other people around, or in an open space.
Yeah, I wasn't asking because I couldn't have joined those dots myself, but I just thought it was helpful to hear how easily some of those dynamics could have been changed, depending on how the question was approached and in what context.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point as well. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has been in that situation, but certainly it happens a lot for women where you have things sprung on you, and you have this pressure, and you have this kind of clicking at what am I thinking of? This clock that starts
like a fight or flight kind of.
Yeah, a timer where it's like, you need to give me an answer now, and it kind of changes the way your decision-making process works.
Yeah, I mean, this all makes a lot of sense, and for what it's worth, I think it does make me think about it a bit differently. To be honest, like I think I was aware of those other factors, with the victims of this feeling like, oh, they could have just said no, without fully considering and thinking that maybe they didn't feel like they could, or maybe they felt like they were unsafe if they did say no, or maybe they didn't know where their exits were, or how, not even physically, but metaphorically as well. So yeah, that I feel like that is helpful, Laura. Thanks. Now, can I? Oh, you go on.
No, go.
I was going to ask, what's your relationship with Louis C.K. now? Have you guys stopped seeing each other? Or? No, like, are you able to watch him now? I mean, I know we've enjoyed, watching his specials in the past together. Are you able to continue to enjoy his art?
No.
You're not?
And it's a bit hypocritical of me, because I am able to do that with other people.
Oh, like Woody Allen?
No, not Woody Allen, but Michael Jackson, for example.
Oh, very nice.
Which is, a bit of, it's interesting, isn't it? What about
it is.
You? I think you, Michael, have said in the past that you are able to separate that a bit more easily. What about you, Nick?
No, I struggle with it. I've not revisited Louis. I think there is gradients of it for me. I think we are all on the same page that there is no one sexually related kind of activity or scandal that gets deserved to be treated with the same brush by everyone. So like the Aziz Ansari stuff is different to the Louis stuff, is different to the Woody Allen and the Weinstein and all that kind of thing. But so when it comes down to things like Ricky Gervais, who we're talking about last week, and who has not been accused of any sort of sexual crimes, but whose content and subject matter is pretty distasteful to me at the moment, I'm still willing to give him a go, because I think he's not funny or not really up to date in his comedic stylings, but I don't hold a grudge against him because he's committed a crime and won't write it off completely. I'm rooting for him to wake up and to get better again. So I will check him out and see whether or not he still does it for me. But when it comes to people where, particularly with someone like Louis, I feel like on the scale of the offences, it's, had some significant offence on people, but it's not the same as rape. If he had come out after that process and really demonstrated an awareness of what he'd done and some attempt to rectify in the aftermath, to put things right, I think I would be more willing to go and revisit it. And so I suppose that's my question to throw back to you, Laura, is do you think that given what he had done, do you think that he could have, after the fact, responded in a way that would have brought you back on board, made you more willing to revisit his work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm nodding as you said all of that because I completely agree. It's I guess and you know what, maybe this is an unfair comparison to make, but I was discussing this with my housemates the other day because we were rewatching those Louis Theroux episodes where he goes to communities of pedophiles. And it sparked this conversation where, we were discussing, after somebody's done something, either committed a crime or something else bad, what do they need to do to rehabilitate themselves in the eyes of the community? And I think it's certainly important to consider, to borrow your phrase, that gradient, and what spectrum something, what level of the spectrum something falls on. But in terms of Louis C.K, yes, it's not a rape, but I guess for anything, I'm just looking at a bare minimum for some sort of idea of, some sort of sign of remorse, or that he feels sorry for what he's done. In fact, what I feel like he has done is just laid low and just waited for it to pass.
I mean, he did issue an apology when it happened.
Yeah. In my view, that's not enough. What I would be looking for is something, more sustained.
Sure. Would you like to see it reflected in his art, perhaps, or like
ideally?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, Nick, we've talked about this before, but he's had a couple of specials now since the scandal.
Cancellation.
And he jokes about it, doesn't he?
Yeah, and it's more in kind of jest. He's like, it's weird that Obama knows my thing now. That's what he jokes about.
See, it's interesting for me as well, because I don't know that I would necessarily say I need person X who's committed crime Y to then reflect that in their art. I don't think for me that's necessarily a precursor, so long as the remorse was evident elsewhere, if there was other actions taken.
Sure.
I think if you are going to bring it up in your art, then it needs to be demonstrated. But if he kind of stopped talking about sex, stopped talking about that behavior as well, and just got, back to basics and started talking about worms or whatever, I would be willing for him to do his 1 hour worms special if he'd also gone out and started a foundation about, bringing up female comics and, some sort of restitution and payment and understanding and awareness. And if he never talked about it again, I'd kind of be okay with that. But I think the fact that he continues to talk about it, or that the sex conversations are not off base for him, it then just draws into sharper light the fact that he hasn't seemingly addressed what he did, to my satisfaction.
But do you really think that if Louis C.K.'s next project after getting cancelled was Louis C.K. presents 5 comedians, do you think anyone's going to buy that? I mean, no.
I don't know. It depends. It depends what your point is there. Like, do you think that it would be read as insincere if he did the work to support female comedians?
Or are you saying that it's not funny?
No, I'm saying that it would be so transparent, and I think people wouldn't receive it well because it would feel disingenuous. It'd be called, it's not because of the other thing, but Louis C.K. presents 5 Michelle Wolf. yeah, people wouldn't buy it. But I take your point that like he did really just lay low and kind of wait for it to breeze over. Which, I mean, he's not employable now, but he is so renowned, and people still love his art so much and are willing to pay for it. That he's not beholden to, a studio or Netflix. He doesn't need them. He can just he's in a privileged position where he can just put stuff out, and he's got a new movie coming out now with Joe List, July 4th.
Well, I think this is an important overlap with the Depp Heard outcome as well, isn't it?
Nice.
Now segues.
This is why she's my favorite podcast partner, because she just has these segues just ready to go. It's incredible.
I'm not even joking. She is way better than me. She's more articulate. She's come prepared with segues. Fuck. I'm going to be out of a minus $70 a year income here.
Yeah. Thanks for transferring that money, by the way. I appreciate it.
But I mean, you've just said there he's not employable. Hasn't he just won a
Grammy
award? Yeah.
Well, that was a funny one, wasn't it? We kind of guesstimated that he won that award because everyone voted for him. I think it's voted on by your peers, and everyone voted for Louis because they thought no one's going to vote for Louis, and they want to get the more of the points for themselves.
Is that your speculation?
Yeah, we just
Sure.
We guessed that.
Okay. Well, in terms of my segue, it just kind of brings up an important conversation. I mean, if we look at the Depp Heard trial, that's a much more complicated conversation than the Louis C.K. one, in my view.
Well, let's get into it. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that, because that's been one where the Johnny Depp's been kind of cast out in isolation for the last 5 years, and seemingly public perception of him has dropped dramatically to the point where supposedly he is losing roles. But this Heard case, this trial defamation case, has been so bizarre in some ways because, I mean, for a number of reasons, the least of which being, bed shitting, but it seems like public perception of Johnny Depp has just dramatically swayed back in his direction, which I just don't know what you chalk that down to, apart from an unlikability in Amber Heard, and this may be true as well. Society may be inherently misogynistic. That could be one. And also, I know, you're surprised with how fucking woke I am, dude. I turn it on for Laura. But I'm being serious. And the third one might be maybe Amber Heard is a liar and people can see through it on some level.
Well, and
what do you think, Nick?
There's other things there as well. There's also for the media coverage and their perspective, clicks, ad money, revenue gain from amping up this into sort of like a high stakes thing, with every note, every statement being, hyper analyzed externally. The fact it's live streamed, which is so fucking bizarre to me.
So weird.
And all that kind of thing. And then there's like a meta level of it, in my understanding as well, which is the tactical choice of jurisdictions where you bring this case and which party is on the stand. And I haven't followed this case as closely, perhaps, or definitely as you, Michael, and perhaps as you to Laura. But my understanding of the situation here is that in a previous case, the allegations against Johnny Depp were held to be true, I think, in like 11 out of 13 counts. And he was, officially convicted, I guess, held to have committed those crimes against Amber. This case here is a corollary to one that was in the UK taken against the publication that carried her article, right? Her op-ed statement calling him, what was it, a wife beater or whatever the term was, which Depp lost. And then here, the case in America was brought against Amber, specifically herself, in which he won for the most part. Is that a correct statement of the facts?
Yeah, I think so.
So to me, just to wrap up
with one correction.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I think the UK case was a libel case brought against The Sun.
Yeah.
Which published that headline about him being a wife beater.
Yeah.
Not related to the Washington Post op-ed piece that she signed off on.
Thank you. Yeah. So my takeaway here is, or that fifth point that I wanted to raise as well, is a jurisdictional thing, and where the different countries' standards as to what consists of slander or libel, and the potential remedies available to Depp in each of those cases were quite different. And I suppose wondering as to the motivation of where and why these cases were brought, and what might have been the desired goal from from both camps really, but from Depp's camp as well. So I don't know if you want to jump in, Laura, with some of your feelings about it all.
Yeah, well, look, I found this one really hard to watch, actually, and so I'm aware of everything that's been going on, but I found it quite upsetting to follow, and I know that Michael's been watching it live.
Been casually enjoying it. I've done other stuff too.
It's so weird to me. Okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't I watch it? It's like two celebrities airing their dirty laundry. I mean, it's great stuff. It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, feeling good about that? All right.
No. Where do I start? I mean, that's such a big question.
Yeah. How about we start right at the very end? Do you think that the case as it was decided correctly? Do you think that the legal justification did when you heard the outcome, do you think that was a fair decision?
Oh. Well, look, I don't pretend to be an expert in American defamation law, but
well, it was UK. So are you an expert in that?
No, this was American.
This was held in the UK. Was it?
We're talking about the most recent.
Yeah,
right.
That was in UK. Yeah, that was held in the UK. That's why there's photos of Johnny Depp in the pubs of England, of London, after the trial.
Case.
The initial case was that in America?
That was in the UK.
Well, the last case was in the UK.
The one that you've been watching?
Yeah.
Was in Virginia, wasn't it?
Yeah,
No.
I thought it was in America, Marco.
It was in America.
Wait, what the fuck? Johnny Depp went out to a lavish Indian dinner afterwards to celebrate. Apparently, he tipped the waiter $30,000.
Yeah, it was in Virginia.
Oh boy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Well, fuck me then.
Which
Okay.
is
Sorry, I was confused there because I swear it was in America. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I suppose post decision, I can't comment on whether I think it was right legally or anything like that. Just watching it as a human person, I can't help but feel really disappointed with the conversation that it's struck up. I mean, even things like, the overlap between this and Louis C.K. is that I was referring to earlier is that we've got two men with maybe a little bit different but huge celebrity profiles. Depp more than anyone really that you can think of. I mean, he's an absolute bona fide A-lister, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's been in everyone's, childhoods, their adulthoods for decades. He's a sex symbol. He's, he's just somebody that people have an incredible attachment to. And so what I have seen is that, you've got videos of fans outside the courtroom waiting for him to go in, waiting for him to come out, even before the trial started, just making up their minds before the case had already been heard. And then, it seems very unbalanced from beginning to end.
Now, would you agree that, I mean, first of all, people, yes, the trial was aired live, but I mean, we're dealing with people who have a team of lawyers throwing millions of dollars at this, where the lawyers essentially playing out their lives. I just rewatched Marriage Story last night, and it just kind of made me think of this as well, where you have a relationship that exists between two people, and then when shit hits the fan and both sides get lawyers, then you're kind of airing out all this stuff, and then it's like, he did this, she did this, and that's the version of their relationship that is playing out. Now, if we are watching this as a documentary, per se, and let's just say every moment of their relationship was recorded and it was presented in a kind of an unbiased documentary, this is hypothetical for hypothetical sake, then we might get more of an understanding of the dynamic between the two of them. So no one knows what's really going on, and ultimately the jury has to decide who they believe, or which case, which side of the trial, which side of, I don't know what the words are, which side of the, dispute, is more believable, or, whatever. So to your earlier point, Laura, yes, people on Johnny's side definitely made up their minds before the trial even started, because of their love and adoration for him. But I also see on the other side of things, people going, well, Johnny Depp is definitely an abuser, and he's a pig and all this stuff, and we should believe Amber Heard. My argument here is that no one really knows. No one should be doing that, really. If they want to be intellectually honest, no one should be, claiming that they know who is telling the truth here, because we just don't. And the other layer on top of this is that they are both actors, and they get paid to lie for a living. And so what I feel like the injustice on this trial was that Johnny Depp just came across more likable. And so this internet sweep of, favoritism for him during the course of this trial, it seems to me just to be boiled down to, him being kind of, more likable when he's on the stand. And what I'm referring to with the society's inherent misogyny, I think Amber Heard comes across as like pandering, or, people don't like, I think people don't like, kind of like a complainy woman. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a perception that society has, or an opinion that society has. I can see your face now. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that I hold this, Laura. I'm just saying I think that's something that exists within society. And I think that's what we saw played out, like a little bit of like, oh no, she just seems like a bitch. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And I certainly agree that the dialogue following the outcome has been, if I can use this phrase, maybe even weaponizing the Me Too movement in the opposite direction.
Sure.
And the point that you raise is a point that's been present in the post-outcome conversation as well, which is in the wake of Me Too, there's been this presumption that any woman that makes an allegation is to believe no matter what the evidence is. So
Yes,
that's another
believe all
conversation that's
women.
been present.
Yep.
But again, if I can bring it back to this idea of a balanced footing, can we really say that these two people, regardless of whether or not they're both famous or both actors, are coming to this case equally? And I don't think we can.
But
In
Laura, Johnny Depp is arguing that she defamed him.
Yes.
So yes, he has more power, but then what? In some ways, he's powerless if we take that approach, whereby there's no way for this to be a balanced. There's no way for this to have balanced footing. He feels like he's been, defamed. So, what is he meant to do then in that case? Is he just meant to just suck it up?
Are you saying, say we're in a situation where he actually is a true victim, he hasn't perpetrated any violence, and he's brought this case for the sole purpose of restoring his reputation?
Yes. Well, if you take his case at face value, that's what it is.
Right.
What I'm saying is, yeah, you go, Nick.
So Laura's hypothetical there is in a world where Johnny Depp is 100% innocent, did not have any prior convictions, and then Amber came in and wrote a libelous piece. Even if there is a dynamic there, a power dynamic of Johnny Depp being, much more capable or rich or powerful or famous against Amber, Michael's question was, what can he do about it in a way which is not unbalanced? How could Johnny Depp, in that hypothetical where he is 100% innocent with a legitimate case, but with a power imbalance, what is the correct steps for him to take?
Yep.
Oh, it's a really hard question. And I suppose if that were the case, then he'd be in a really tricky position. And there would be no way to pursue, pursue that legal action without having at least, a portion of the conversation including a discussion about that power imbalance. But I don't know how useful that conversation is when those factors are very much present.
Yeah, I think that's where I would then take this, which is to say that in that case, I can see it is a very difficult question to ask as to what to do. But I think that you can then hold it up to the current state of affairs, the actual world that we live in, and say that he was convicted on these assault charges in a court of law previously. And that makes that question easier for me to answer about that dynamic.
Are you talking about the UK case?
Yeah, I'm saying that in our world, Johnny Depp has been held to have committed these crimes. So
Yes, but to a civil standard still. So while I think a lot of the conversation has been, well, why has a UK version found him guilty when a US court hasn't? And I think it's really hard to answer that question, other than some people have put forward that UK courts are more plaintiff friendly. So in other words, more likely to side with a victim, considering that the balance that you need, the legal burden that you need to prove the case on is balance of probabilities rather than a criminal standard, which is beyond reasonable doubt. So it's a much lower test to meet. And if you consider that it's happening in a jurisdiction and a court that is, maybe a little more likely to side with a victim of family violence than a perpetrator of family violence, I don't know how valuable that argument is, but that's one of the things that have been put forward.
Can I just ask then? I mean, Nick, on one hand, it seems that you are saying that we're trusting the jury's judgment in the UK with regards to Johnny Depp's the allegations of or the charges of domestic violence, but then and accepting that decision. But on the one in America, where he's won the case, we don't accept that one. So
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that question was about juries. I think is a really interesting one, because in the UK, I believe it was decided by a judge, not by a jury, and that historically a judge has just because it's their job, a much deeper understanding of the law, a deeper understanding of what the difference between a balance of probabilities and beyond reasonable doubt is. It's their day in, day out life, and an ability to, quote unquote, more objectively apply those standards to a case based on the facts in front of them, versus that of a jury, which is a jury of your peers, whatever that might be, but which is effectively lay people who need to have legal concepts explained to them, who are
susceptible to external influence.
Yep, there was no media lockout on them, I believe, so they could potentially be seeing the media coverage of it. And also,
was there really?
I believe that's the case. I don't think there was a media lockout.
Boy.
Yeah,
they probably wouldn't be watching it. They'd probably be bored.
Yeah.
I was hearing stories that they were falling asleep during the trial.
Jeez, I wasn't.
But a jury is thus also very susceptible to that fame. That I'm sitting in a room with Johnny Depp. I liked Pirates of the Caribbean. That is a much harder thing for your average person to try and separate, and particularly when they're being courted effectively by the lawyers for both sides of the case, having them try and explain things, appealing to the affection that they might have for these people. So I wonder if you had any sort of comments on the jury process, Laura, and what impacts that might have.
Yeah, well, as we call in the biz, guys, juries are a mixed bag. But yeah, it's just kind of, and that's
a bit weird concept, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? But it's where the power dynamic really comes to the front of the conversation again. And how can we have a conversation about this trial and not take into account, what the jury must have been coming to this case with? We've got, on the one hand, someone who hasn't established a career that well, isn't, and on the other hand, we have someone who's been in childhood movies. We've got a nostalgic connection to. We have a real kind of investment in him almost.
Yeah.
Don't we?
Yeah.
He was Willy Wonka.
That's his worst role.
What's everyone's favourite Johnny Depp movie?
His best role, Willy Wonka.
Good question, Michael.
And then we'll do Amber next. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Anyone like that one? Oh, you know what I really like? Finding Neverland.
I studied that in English.
Did anyone see Finding Neverland? That was great.
Edward Scissorhands.
I'm trying to think.
Fear and Loathing's good.
I haven't seen a great deal beyond his
Oh, you know what it is? It's Rango, dude. Rango's the best.
The other thing I think is it's a really tricky case, and that's because we don't have a perfect victim on either side, do we?
No, there's no winners in this, really, is there?
So the only real way to discuss this case is to have a really nuanced, kind of informed conversation about it. But then when we think about how the media would portray something like this and get clicks and get as many people viewing their stories as possible, it's probably not going to involve the details that we probably have an obligation to discuss in this kind of case. Is it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's easier to simplify it, and it's easier to identify one person as a hero and the other as a, an evil person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you just know that after that case, Johnny Depp just ordered, a couple of bags of blocaine and just got right on the piss.
God.
One thing I did think was interesting about it, though, was that none of his previous partners came forward and kind of were willing to say anything had happened in their
Kate Moss.
relationships.
Kate Moss was up there.
But what I'm saying is they basically all said he never did anything like this throughout our relationships, which isn't usually the pattern.
Well, I mean, do you not believe that then?
No, that's her point.
Oh, so your point
Right.
is that you usually see a patterned behavior.
Mm.
Okay, so you stand with Johnny. Is that what you're saying?
Oh my God, Michael.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. But I wonder as well, again, you can't extricate it from the media circus thing. I wonder how much of that decision making on the other girlfriend's part is as much about I don't want to get into whatever this is for my own history with it because fuck this, you know.
And that's exactly the approach we should be having in every single one of these cases. And that's, you know, each one on their own merits. Let's look at the surrounding circumstances. What are everybody's, you know, place in this situation? What are some of the things that might prevent them from telling the truth? What are the things that speak, you know, to the truth of what they're saying? We've got to be considering the dynamics and the balance and all of those things we've already been talking about every single time.
I don't want to keep you all afternoon, Laura, but if you had to sort of sum up in a big picture kind of way, and I realize this is already impossible by before I've even asked it, but how do you feel about the state of the culture when it comes to our treatment of victims of allegations of the Me Too thing? Are you feeling like it is, on the balance of things, being a positive development in the way that we handle things culturally and legally, or do you feel like there is just as many things to be worried about in the wake of something like the media coverage that's come off this trial and the way that men and other perpetrators are being treated? Where do you stand on sort of where we are as a society?
I think a bit of all three, really. Obviously, it's important to consider that men can be victims of violence as well. I do think the conversation post Me Too is almost, I mean, I think as a society we're struggling to find some balance here. It's either Me Too all the time, or it's what people have referred to as an overcorrection, and it's just swung in the absolute opposite direction, hasn't it? Where, as I said before, it feels like this movement is being weaponized against women, rather than, you know, it should be about finding some sort of balance between the previous state of affairs where perhaps, you know, there was this huge imbalance between men and women, and, you know, maybe a situation that I can understand men might be afraid of, where they think that women are making unfounded allegations against them, and no matter what, which happens a lot less than people say they happen. I don't know. I think it's difficult, especially in family violence and sexual abuse or assault situations, just because of the inherent issues in proving these kinds of things. You know, they often happen in situations where it's in an intimate partner relationship, where there might not be witnesses around, or it might not be one example, one event, but it happens over a period of time. These are all things to consider in terms of difficulty in proving these kinds of things happened. And then when you factor into the situation, another thing, which is why are these happening more often than not to women? And if we consider again that it's because you know, it might be you're both having very different expressions on your face right now.
I'm just listening.
Oh, I'm just giving you the space to speak.
I'm
sorry.
not used to this, Nick, in the director household. Yeah, and I think when you consider, well, let's look at Louis C.K. I think he knows what he's doing, and he's choosing the people that he's doing this to very well, because he is in a position of physical power over them, professional power, emotional power, and that a lot of these types of crimes are committed where somebody is abusing a imbalance of power. I think it makes it difficult to reach a balanced perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to say is
Absolutely.
we're always going to have those issues, and I don't know how we get to that balance.
Are you optimistic in as much as where we are today seems at least somewhat better than where we were before, pre-Me Too, that there do seem to be some consequences being meted out versus an era, even if you go back like 60 years where that was literally unheard of. Do you think that in a large scale look at things that there is optimism to be had, that a balance can be achieved because we are already closer to that balance than where we have been, even if there is some, peaks and troughs of quote unquote overcorrection still to come?
Yeah, I think when you look back, it's easier to feel optimistic. But in the moment now, I don't know that a lot of people feel that optimistic about where it's headed. It feels like we're a bit in limbo almost, doesn't it?
You don't feel that things are... You don't think that society will naturally correct itself?
No.
Right, so you think it could potentially get worse? I mean, that seems to me to be harder to believe. I think with the overcorrection stuff, it is... I think there was a sense of overcorrection with the Me Too movement and with, campaigns like Believe All Women, which is just not sustainable because, you just shouldn't believe all women. You shouldn't believe all men. You shouldn't believe anyone. And I think they do a disservice, and they almost undermine when society does overcorrect in that fashion. It undermines the balance that we're trying to strike. Because people feel like, I mean, this is like an attack, and it's just like unfounded. And it kind of all comes out. It's like it's kind of washed with everything else, if you know what I mean. So I think striving, and it goes to racial equality and sexual identity and trans rights and all that stuff. The aim, I think, should be equality from the get-go, rather than trying to give certain minorities a leg up, or certain factions of society a leg up, in order to, compensate for the inequality that exists currently, and wait for it to kind of go back down. It should be everyone is on the same playing field, no matter what their sexual identity, racial identity, no matter what.
Laura, you might have an opinion about this as well, but for me, I mean, it's a common refrain, but the problem with that goal, as much as it might be the end goal that we're all aiming for, is that it doesn't reflect the historical disadvantage that these minorities are trying to overcome. So you can decide to hand everyone all the same things now from this point onwards, but if one person, in the metaphorical race to the finish line, is starting 50 meters behind the start post because for generations their property was stolen, their ethnicity was mistrusted, they were underpaid, they were beaten up, they were gentrified, all of these things, and then you say, okay, everyone, we've stopped doing that and now everyone gets paid the same, there is still an inequality there, which is what aiming for a short-term quote-unquote overcorrection, where you are shooting above equality for a minority to try and give them restitution, if you like, for the historical imbalances, but with the ultimate goal of bringing everyone back to the place where we're all being handed out the same social opportunities and respects and payment and all that kind of thing after we've caught up. Like that ultimate goal that you're talking about is 100% true, but I don't think you can get there without first overcorrecting to compensating for the past.
Yeah, I think with things like reparations, that certainly makes sense. But with with Believe All Women, to bring that up again, I mean, that is an unsustainable philosophy for society to take on, and it won't last. And my argument is that it serves to undermine the goal of Me Too in the long run.
But if the historical position was no women believed, right, or no ability for comeuppance or justice, then do you not feel like as a goal of reaching a closer midpoint that you do need to aim further than that? Feel free to chip in, Laura, as well.
To answer your question there, Nick, before we refer to Laura, the answer to that is no, I don't think we should with that specific example, because if we I'll just be making the same points that I've made before. But yeah, Laura, do you want to chip in?
I just, the only thing I would say, I mean, reparations, I don't have anything else to add there, but Michael, I just think we need to somehow, get over some of the obstacles to reaching this balance that we're all trying to discuss here. And again, I'd say that, if we're talking about maybe sexual violence or family violence or something like that, then and if we're talking about, one person making an allegation against another person in the context of this kind of situation, family violence or sexual violence, for an example, we cannot get over the fact of the matter, which is that these kinds of things are often very hard to prove because of the way in which they occur. So we are faced with a situation where it's often one person's word against the other, isn't it? How do we get past that? Because you're always going to say, you're always going to have one person saying, well, this has happened to me. And then if the person who is in the more powerful position, which in this case is men, refuse to say anything other than, I feel like I'm being attacked, or this isn't true, how are we supposed to get past that? What we do need is for men to say, yes, we're willing to have an informed, open discussion about this. And that will require some admitting that this happens exponentially more to women than it does to men, and by men. Absolutely. That includes men against men violence.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what I feel is the biggest obstacle at the moment is men not being able to have that conversation without feeling like, and I know this is something you've raised previously, without feeling like you, the person, is being accused of something. Right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about maybe some of the thoughts you have around that? Maybe feeling like, because I know you've said in the past it's kind of this not all men idea. Can you talk about where that comes from?
Hold on. Don't put that on me.
Why not?
No, I don't think that she was saying that you are an advocate of the not all men movement, but I think.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
I think the question there is that we have. I think what Laura has referred to previously is the fear that it could happen to you, right? Like if you're in a society where it's #BelieveAllWomen, the fear I think that some men have is the idea that, but what if it's misused against me? What if I didn't do something wrong and we believe all women and I don't get my say, right? Like that's been something that we've discussed previously. And is that what you would like explored there, Laura, in terms of Michael's?
Look, I think that is a I think from the male perspective, yes, that is a valid concern to have, and I've lived through that as well. With when I had my stalker, when I had the stalker, like I was worried, like what could she make up about me if she's unhinged, so that is a valid concern, but I do agree that it pales in comparison to having women's voices heard, because as you say, they are dramatically overrepresented in these cases. So I actually agree that that we as a blanket rule, we should tend to lean towards believing women when they when they raise allegations, sexual allegations or domestic violence allegations or whatever. I think we should lean towards that. But I think we should also try and look at things with a critical lens if we can. I think it's achievable to hold both of those views, or look through both of those lenses at the same time. You may disagree with that in your experience as a lawyer, Laura, but I just feel like we can kind of achieve that as a society, and that should be our goal.
What do you think? What part of that do you think I would disagree with?
Well, I'm kind of asking you. Do you think society at large, or even just within the courts, can look at cases of sexual assault allegations with both a critical lens and also a bent towards believing the victim's side of things?
I agree with that to an extent. I think this may surprise you, but even in terms of, I think in a social situation, yes, but given there are actual real world consequences in terms of people's liberty and actual penalties that they're subject to in the court system, I think it doesn't do anyone a service to have a bent towards believing women. But there are ways that we can overcome those sort of evidentiary imbalances. And that's sort of part of why the Heard Depp thing is so interesting. So we can look at, people's previous histories, or if they have been convicted of anything in the past, or if they've had any intervention orders in the past and that kind of thing. There are ways around that. In terms of looking at it as a member of society, I do think we should bend towards believing women, but as you said, with a critical lens.
Okay, we agree.
So that's the best way to approach it. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that entirely. Do you think it's achievable?
Wow, this is new territory for us, Nick.
Yeah. We've actually got on camera a moment where you both agreed with each
other. Hold on.
You'll edit this out, right?
We agree quite a lot. We agree quite a lot, I think. No?
That feels to me like a nice place to wrap up this conversation. Was there anything left unsaid? Any final points that anyone would like to chip in?
No.
Great. Well, Laura, it has been really lovely to have you here to hear an intelligent viewpoint on this podcast for once. It's been truly lovely to have your input here. I would like to give you the opportunity, if you need to duck away, to disappear. But if you would like to hang around and just be a little light and talk about a myth, I've got a couple of myths that I really need to get off my chest. So the choice is yours.
Stick around.
If you would like to.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I got some myths too.
I did want to ask you, though. I've got myths bloody galore. Did you have an idea of what you're going to title this episode?
No, please. Do you have a suggestion?
Never ever taken one of my
don't.
suggestions, so that's
Yeah.
really insulting.
That's not true.
You
I
took
have.
one.
I have. And it was a disaster. Everyone was very confused
Wasn't it
and I never
farts or
went back.
something?
I'm sure I'll find something really
Great.
light and
To
fun.
misrepresent
Just
the
real-
entire tone of this
Just easy
episode.
breezy.
What about Deep Fort shits the bed with Laura?
No, it's got to be like a
Perfect.
Johnny Depp movie pun or something.
Oh,
Oh God, you want to really make light of
what's
this. I
eating
see,
Gilbert
yeah.
Rape?
Oh fucking hell!
Oh my god.
Oh Jesus! I think we'll table that discussion for later. If you've enjoyed this, thank you so much for listening. It's been a real pleasure, and I found it very informative and interesting, and I hope you did too. And it's nice every 6 years to have one episode that's genuinely worthwhile. There's plenty more of that in the podcast feed, but you can also find us on facebook.com/deepfort. You can find us on Twitter at deepfort, SoundCloud for all of our jingles, Spotify for all of our songs, and send an email or some feedback and commentary to deepfort@gmail.com. We look forward to reading it. How about some myths, everyone? Should we get some
Myth it
myths
up.
off our chest? Pause for jingle. Sorry, I just need you to not laugh there, just so we can pause for jingle. God, she's
I'm so sorry.
it's
I'm
almost
so
like she's
sorry.
not done this before.
Michael's moved, and I'm displeased, riled up, offended, aggrieved, irritated, chagrined, pissed off, put out, resentful, and piqued, discontented. Michael's moved.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Michael,
it
got
sounds
some
like we've all
myths?
got some myths. So let's get
we
into
got some
it.
myths.
I've got one.
Yeah. Laura. Okay. Well, a bit rude of
I
you to
thought
go
that's-
first in the context of everything we just talked about with power imbalances, but
There's definitely a power
Yep.
imbalance on this particular episode. It's, I'll kick it off. All right, so I've got a massive myth here that I think you guys both like cooking, right? Yeah, Laura doesn't. Laura's just
Laura's
Uber
shaking
Eats
her
all the
head.
way. But here's one for you, Nick. You know, we often share recipes. I wouldn't say often, but we have once or twice. But how about this as a myth? When you're looking up a recipe online and the recipe needs to tell you the
I know where you're
whole
going with
life
this.
story
Yeah.
before you can even access
Yeah.
the ingredients. I mean, are you kidding me?
yeah. In the 1600s, they first discovered that grain could be ground together into forming an interesting construct we call flour. Flour, which is one of the key ingredients in today's recipe. I learned about flour when I was...
It's the worst.
Fucking, it's the most...
And it's like so self-indulgent. It's written by like someone with a blog, and they've like got this recipe, and they give you their whole fucking life story before you even see like a half an onion. So, I mean, do they do that? Do you think just to get people on their page so they can put ads on?
I don't know.
I mean, there's some of these recipes which I respect that they'll have a jump to a recipe up the top.
That's what I was going to say. I have a demythifier for you, which
But not
is
all
the
of them
jump to
have it.
recipe.
Not all of them have it.
But not all.
What
not
recipe
all
were you
websites.
looking up, Michael?
Yeah.
Oh, it's. I'm looking up a recipe, every 36 hours. I'm looking up soups. I'm looking up curries.
Soups.
I'm looking up. I've literally never made a soup.
So every 36 hours means that you're looking up a recipe at like 6 p.m. and then again at 6
Yeah, it's
a.m.
not
a
a great
day
system,
later.
but
And
it's
then
not a
at
great
6
system,
p.m.
but it's my
again.
system.
I know how much you love looking up soup just in, like the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning.
I've literally never made a soup.
Yeah, I've
But,
never seen you make a soup.
I've never eaten
Ever.
soup. No.
Have you ever eaten soup?
I'm not even sure what soup is. But yeah, it's like a savory cereal, I think. But
Yeah, that's it.
less chunky.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
But yeah, no, that just really grinds my gears, man.
Oh, wonderful. I have a related myth, which I might just
Yeah, babe.
piggyback on that. God, I got a microwave myth. I got a microwave myth coming out of my yeah.
Your butt.
So
Your
let
what,
me
Nick?
describe.
Finish that sentence.
I was trying to keep things a little bit classy.
His urethra.
My microwave is, for some reason, doesn't have numbers. It doesn't have your classic 1 to 0, enter your time kind of thing. It has a plus 10 seconds, a plus 1 minute, a plus 10 minute, right? And it's got these buttons, and then you have to do some sort of combo of them. It also has a button called add more time, and this is the subject of my myth. It has an add more time button. This button does not operate by any laws known to man. It is completely unpredictable. It serves no discernible purpose. Its sole reason for existing is apparently just to traumatize me daily. You can't use it in the middle of a cycle to add more time, even though the time says add more time. If you press the add more time thing during an ongoing microwave event, it doesn't do anything. You can't actually add more time with the add more time button. The add more time button can only be used after the microwaving has finished, but for an indeterminate duration after it's finished. So this is what happens. I am, let's say, heating a soup. I've got a nice soup. I'm heating it up in the microwave. That's not a one and done thing. You need to be stirring that at intervals. So you put a minute on, you take it on, you give it a stir, you put it back in again. If I go to press 1 minute, it will not let me just do a minute again, because it has only been, say, 20 seconds since there was an item last cooked. I have to press add more time first and then press
No, that's fucked
1
up.
minute again. But this duration is completely imperceptible. There's no visual feedback as to when I'm in the add more time window. So sometimes, if it's been slightly longer than the arbitrary 20 or 30 seconds after the microwave's finished, and I'm like, oh, I've got to press this stupid add more time button, it doesn't do anything. I just needed to press the 1 minute thing. It has served no purpose. It's a completely purposeless button, and it drives me mental. I don't understand it. It's infuriating.
That's
so
a pretty
that
good
is my
one,
myth.
and yeah, well explored in detail. What I loved was you referring to your microwaving as microwaved events. Microwave
Yeah, a
sessions.
session.
Does this
A buzz
does this
session.
myth Casey as well as much as you?
Probably not. He's a fairly cool cucumber. He doesn't tend to get
nice.
miffed.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Laura, anything
Well,
to
look,
throw in the pot?
I am a long time listener of this show, and by long time I mean only in the last year or so.
That's long enough.
Yeah, sure. How long has it been going on? 7 years or something?
Pushing 8 now.
8. Okay.
8.
And
But seven of those were very problematic, I would say. The problematic years.
yeah, I would delete them if I were you. And I note that previous myths have been very heavily criticized for being either too specific or not being specific enough. So I have a myth, but I think it's too specific.
No, I'm ready.
It is.
Am I going to get
No, I love the specificity.
criticized for this?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, look, there's this woman on my tram. Every morning, I go to work. It's 8 a.m. She brings out one deshelled boiled egg.
Ooh.
I don't see a container. I don't know where this egg has come from.
It's self-contained.
Does she pull it from her jacket pocket? Does she deshell before she gets on the tram? Who knows?
Wait, it's not shelled, so she doesn't.
She's done the prep before she gets on, I'm assuming.
Or
And
maybe
that's
she's
the
got a bit of
ultimate
tissue.
irony, right? Because it comes with a protective wrapper. That's the whole point. But she's taken the wrapper off and then pocketed it.
Well, I don't know what I would prefer. I don't know if I would, because as soon as you take the shell off, then the smell, fills the space, doesn't it?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
this
a way-
is currently odorless.
Yeah, well, it's not completely odorless, deshelled, but I think it's less smelly than it otherwise would be. So I appreciate that.
Does she just mung on this
Yeah,
whole?
just-
Now
like
this is
an
the
apple?
second part of the myth.
Oh, two-parter.
You know how people take crisps out and then they lick the dust off the crisps and then they lick their fingers and then they eat the crisp?
You mean like a
She-
slow chip chewer?
Yep. She licks
Oh,
the egg,
Oh,
then she peels
No.
the white bit off, and then she saves the yolk for last.
oh, no way! On a tram.
that's
And the whole process
Psychotic.
takes about 20 minutes from
20 minutes.
from egg to yolk being done.
20
I'm just-
minutes.
Yep.
I'm just
The entire
imagining you
duration.
giving her a death stare, like
Every day.
opposite. At some point, you're just gonna be like, "Again, the egg? Are you serious?"
Yeah. I have so many
I
questions.
have a feeling that this is the best part of her day. Like 20 minutes to eat an egg, that is someone savoring this moment. They are absolutely loving it.
Yeah. Well, here's the most confusing part. She seems completely normal other than this behavior, which makes me think she gets off on it or something. Like she just gets off on me. Like if I were not there giving her a death stare, she just wouldn't enjoy it as much.
And I suppose that's unsettling because that just means that anyone around us at all times could have a loose egg in their pocket. They could be walking around ready to pull something like this out. And it's a very unsettling world we live in, right? The implications are profound.
There are Eggwalkers among us.
Yeah.
But do you reckon she eats the yolk like back at the office?
No, she eats it on the tram, but she saves it to last.
That's really fucked up. That's not.
Yeah.
That's a great myth, but that is honestly really creepy.
That's something that you would see a serial killer do in the movies.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I do take a boiled egg encased in its shell to work, and sometimes I do put it in my jacket pocket and just pull it out of my jacket pocket, and it does get a few looks in the office. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
And
With good
I say to everyone, you know, does everyone mind if I have a boiled egg in the office? You know, given the smell, and then everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine," but then my boss will open up a window.
They're
you know,
lying
just
to you.
passive aggressively, just like
I think you should
open
have,
up his window.
You should print up little cards, sometimes like people with Tourette's do, where like if anyone, you know, they draw attention or like a confused look, they can just like hand over a card, or you know, like the Joker in the movie Joker. Hi, I have a condition. I like to eat eggs, and just have it ready to to hand out and really cut this all off before it like gets too awkward for everyone.
A license to egg.
License to egg.
Michael's egg obsession is well known. I mean, he's had this kind of egg thing for as long as I can remember. So in a way, you know, if this woman, I'd like some context. And if she's been an egg lover since birth, then I can understand that. But it's just I have nothing to go on.
Laura, this is really good. I reckon this is one of our best eps for sure.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you
not
so
just
much
saying that.
Thank you for having me.
Being part of it.
Did you enjoy it? Somewhat.
Did
I
you?
did. I really need to go to the bathroom right now, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. Otherwise,
It's a brekkie special.
we all have weak bladders. Yep.
It's true. But I mean, you've done very well. Normally we stop at least once every podcast so that Michael can run off. That's not a joke. That's 100% accurate.
At least once. At least
yeah.
once.